So my name is Stephanie Garner. I'm an Australian visual artist based in Geelong. I've been making art for the last 8 years, and I've been in art school for the last 6. My practice predominantly focuses on issues of environmentalism, feminism, and occultism. And my main mediums are painting, photography, collage, and drawing. This current exhibition of work entitled Flowerface is a series of 3 photographic images, 2 prints and one large silk print. The works are about the story of my great-grandmother and her experiences of clairvoyance within the late 19th century. The work is where I embody the character of Flowerface, where I created a mask of individual straw flower heads, and I wear a vintage lace dress. And I, throughout the work, try to establish the complexities of her story within the experiences of clairvoyance, as well as the defamation of mysticism within history. There's a strong reference to the Victorian era and spirit photography with the spiritualism movement, where photography was considered that the camera could perceive things that the human eye couldn't, and that it was a way to connect to other dimensions or realms. So Edith is the name of my great-grandmother, and I specifically made the work as a portrait of her. I was interested in how her as a person had such a tumultuous life, specifically to do with the ways in which people thought of her, and her children had a really strange relationship with her, to the point where there's only one photo of her that exists because one of her children burnt them all, because he was too pained with the sight of her image and the memories of his experiences of her. So she lives in stories, and I have a few of her medical records, and I wanted to create a portrait of her, but it was always going to be a mix of stories, and it could never be her telling her own story. So the flower face was this strange shifting of character, where the individual can't speak, can't express, and all notions are thrusted upon her. So I really wanted to make the work as a portrait of her, but it was always going to be somewhat convoluted aesthetically, because she only really exists in memory, and the photo that does remain is a very blurry, small little picture. Yeah. This image was taken on the property that belonged to my great-grandmother's son, so my grandfather. I wanted to navigate the area as kind of her presence or ghost walking around the space, and the feeling, the responsibility, but the power of motherhood, but how the role of mothers is so hard, and that there must always be a respect to oneself, but how it will, taking on the role of mother changes from you being yourself. And I think especially with the roles of women, that you have to be multifaceted and be different people for different reasons. So I wanted to Flowerface character here to embody kind of a wild mother nature character, but to still have that, the markings and the delusion of her face being distorted by memory. So Spectre was also taken on the same property, and it is a double exposure where I wanted the image to be an example of astral projection, or the feeling of disembodiment, of spirit leaving the body, whether that be in trance or a dream sequence, that in reference to Victorian era methodologies of spiritualism as methods of communication, but also as a coping mechanism of disassociation, that there is a sense of safety removing the spirit from the body to protect the spirit. My Edith, my great-grandmother, she was institutionalized for her experiences, and being voiceless and imprisoned in a sense, the ability to transcend the reality was a coping mechanism. Yeah. So I have a history of mediumship and clairvoyance within my family that dates back many generations, and there were quite a few women who were institutionalized or have been employed and respected for their abilities. During the making of this work, I began to feel like I was having my own clairvoyant experiences, and I was interested in interrogating the politics when it comes to thinking about other people who perceive the world differently, and the spiritual technologies of intuition or clairvoyance, claircognizance, etc., and how, because of certain eras, people were treated differently than they are now. And I do believe there is still a taboo aspect to these topics today, but not as severe as being institutionalized or labeled as psychotic or hysterical. So a lot of the work was kind of my process of trying to make peace with this history, understanding that I am a part of this history, and where do I sit now in this historical period, how I would be treated, and how I can understand these esoteric topics in contemporary times. So a lot of the work was cathartic, and to feel like I could tell her story while figuring out my own.